With the few concepts we've learned on React, it is finally time to build our project. So we'll be building a single page application in this section, and we'll be building a to-do list app that manages a list of tasks, and the features will be adding new tasks. We'll be able to mark a task as complete, and we'll be able to remove a task from the list, that is deleting a task. We'll be using React's useState hook for state management. We'll be handling forms and events, and we'll be using conditional rendering to update the user interface of our application. So without further ado, let's get to the video. We can see here I have my project set up already, and this is my project name, React Todo app, and we can see here my server is running. If you're having any issues with installing React, there is no problem. You can refer back to the beginning of this course to have a recap of how we did that. You might want to get this project file from our repository so that you can follow along and not be left behind. It's a very easy thing to do. The steps to clone the project will be available in the README file of the repository. So, and also the app.css file is available. The code for the file is available in the Github repository. So we won't be going through the CSS code in this video, because the main purpose of this course is for React. So it will be beneficial if you can clone the repository and follow along with the video. The link to the GitHub repository is down below in the video description, so you can check it out. The first thing we'll be doing is we'll head over to our app.jsx file, and we'll remove pretty much we'll be removing this. We'll be removing this because we won't be needing it. We'll be removing every of the JSX elements here. We'll be removing this, and we would also be removing the state call and the import statement. So for this project, we'll be needing a single file, just one component. So we'll be creating that. We'll say todo app.jsx. So this is going to be the components for our project. Once our project file is being created, we need to code out our component boilerplate by saying const todo app equal arrow function. Then we'll return our JSX. We can just do this for now. Then obviously we would need to export our component. Export todo app, export default todo app, like so. So we would have to head back to our app.jsx to call this. We'll just wrap it around a div tag. We can say class name app, then we have to import our todo app components. Import todo app from todo app, then we'll call it here. We'll say to do app. So that is all for this app.js file. We won't be doing anything inside of it anymore, so we can close it. So back to our to do app.jsx, we will be importing the necessary hook from React, which is the useState hook. So we'll say useState from React. We will be needing two state variables to manage the tasks and the input field. So we'll come over here to declare the two state variables. For this project, we'll be commenting our steps. We'll be adding comments to our steps. We'll be adding comments to our steps. So the next time you refer back to the project, you can see you can have a remembrance of how we actually went about things in the video, how we did some things, and also the comment is going to help a lot. So we'll be adding the first comment. We say state to hold the list of tasks. So for that, we would say const tasks, then we'll say set tasks, then would assign an empty array to our state, then we'll add the state to hold current values, state to hold current values. So for that, we'll say const task input, then we'll set task input, then would assign an empty string to our state by saying useState empty string. So this task state here, right here, is going to be an array that would store all the tasks in our application, and this task input state is going to be a string that would store the current value entered in the input field of the application. So the next thing is we'll be implementing the function that will be responsible for handling changes in the input field of our application. So we can come over here and say function to undo input changes. So we'll be creating the function, say const undo input change. We had an event parameter, our arrow function, then we'll say set task input to be e.target value. That is going to target our input value. The undo input change function that we just created will update the task input, the task input state we created over here with the current value of the input field. So this will keep the input field controlled by React. Our next step is to implement the function that adds a new task to the list when the task button of our application is clicked. So inside the function, we'll ensure that the empty tasks are not added by checking if our task input state, our task input state over here, by checking that our task input state is not empty after trimming it. So once for example, if we submit an empty input, nothing is going to be added to the task state, our state array over here. Nothing is going to be added. So let's do that real quick. So what I just did here is I made sure we are not submitting an empty input field. So we are not submitting an empty input field while adding our task. And I created a new task object with a unique ID. Each task is going to have a unique ID, a task input, and a completed status, which will be setting to false by default. So until you click on completed, it will be set to true, either true or false. It will be it will track the completion status of our task. And also I added this line to update the task array, our task array over here. So whenever a task is being added, this line is going to update the task array with the new task to be displayed on the screen. The next step is to implement a function to toggle the completion status of a task. That is, we can click on a task to complete, or we can decide to leave it as incomplete. So would come outside of this function, create another function. We forgot to comment this. Let's say function to toggle the completion status of a task. So you can head over here and say const toggle task completion. We pass in a task ID parameter over here. ID, that would be our parameter for this function. Then we are going to be mapping through the tasks and toggle the completed property for the task with the matching ID. So for that, we'll say const updated tasks we see task to map over our tasks. See task to map, then we'll pass in task, our arrow function, okay, task.id, task.id, then passing a task. Say completed. Task dot completed. Then else task. So after doing this, after mapping through the task, we would then update the task state with the modified array, which will allow the user interface to reflect the task's completion status. So for that, we are going to say set tasks. We'll set that to be updated tasks. Once this is done, we'll then implement the function to delete a task. So we'll say delete task. Then we'll define our function. We'll say delete task. We're passing our task ID. Then we'll be using the filter method to remove the task with the specified task ID from the task array. So we can say const updated tasks equal task dot filter tasks dot filter, passing our task. Then say task dot ID not equal task ID. So the next thing is to update the task state with the filtered array. So the array we just filtered, we are going to use it to update our task state. Then that would effectively remove the task from the list. So we can come over here. Then we'll say set task. Then we'll pass in updated tasks. And with that, we are done with the logic of our application. So the last step is to render the user interface of our application. So I'll be placing my code editor and my browser screen side by side. So now we can start working on the JSX of our application. We'll head over here and let's just create a div tag. And I forgot to mention earlier, in React, instead of using ordinary class like we do in HTML, we are going to get an error because class is a keyword in React. We are not allowed to use ordinary class in React. So instead of class, we are going to be using class name. So we can just say todo app. That will be responsible for the styling of the application. So we can just come inside our div tag over here and create an h1 tag and see todo list. We can see the changes are being made on the screen. Then we would have our input field. You can just put a placeholder. placeholder. Let's say add a new task. Okay, it's coming up. Since we won't be needing our index.css file, we can just head over here and clear all the code so we can have a better user interface. Okay, so now inside our input field we need to add a value. So we need to add a value, and the value is going to be the state we created earlier, which is the task input. To track the input of our task, and we also need to have an onChange function, which is going to be the undo input change function we created earlier also. So that is it for our input field. So the next thing is to create a button. Okay, so our button is going to have an onClick function, which is going to be add task. So we can just come over here and say add task. Okay, so now we need to render the list of tasks. So for that we are going to be using an unordered list tag, a URL tag. Then we are going to map our tasks by saying tasks.map. Then we're going to pass in our task. I'm going to use an li tag. We'll pass in a key, which is our task ID, task.id. Then our class name, which is going to be sorry for this, our class name, which is going to be task dot completed. If so, then we say completed, else we say nothing. So this is conditional rendering in React. This is something we call ternary operator in JavaScript. So inside of our li tag, you can just define a span tag, which is going to have an onClick function, which should be toggle task completion, personal task ID. Then inside of the span we'll say task dot text. Then outside of the span we need to add a button, the delete button. Say delete. Then we also need to add an onClick function. Then we pass in our delete function, the delete function we created earlier. We'll pass in and say delete task. Then we'll pass in our task ID, task.id. So let's test our application. Let's see. Okay, after waking up, I need to brush my teeth. Let's add that. So let's test our application and see if it actually works. So let's say after waking up, I brush my teeth. Let's add that. Yeah, we can see our task is being updated over here. Let's add more tasks. If we can also notice, after adding the task, our input field is not being cleared. So we need to clear the input field. Let's see, let's come over here. Where is it? Okay. So what we need to do now is inside our add task function, after adding the task, we need to set our task input to an empty string. So we can say task input, we set it to an empty string. So let's try that again. Let's add this. Now we can see our input field is empty. So the delete button is also working. We can delete this. Let's add more tasks. Let's say go to the gym, add heat, code, Netflix, okay. So we can see let's mark this as complete. See, once we click on our task, we'll get a green line that shows our task is being completed. Then once we click again, it returns back to its normal state. So we can choose to update our task status by clicking and unclicking on it. So that shows either our task is complete or not. So also the delete button is working, and that's pretty much it for our application. So we've been able to build a simple but functional to-do list application in React, which we used state management to update the user interface of our application dynamically, and we also implemented features to add tasks, to toggle the completion status of our task, and to also delete tasks efficiently.